While Jack Thorne's adaptation of Lord of the Flies is fairly faithful to Golding's novel, his focus deviates from Golding's thesis that humans are inherently evil. Instead, Thorne accepts that humans are capable of good and evil, and focuses on the conditions that shape a person's morality. For this video, I'm going to focus on just one character, Jack. Jack is your average self-important douche and insecure asshole who punishes everyone around him. In the first episode, entitled Piggy, Jack enters the story after Ralph and Piggy gather the boys together. When Jack and his choristers arrive, Ralph invites them to join the meeting, but Jack tells the choristers to stand still. At this point, Simon faints, which leads Piggy to shout, "We need to be careful in the sun, over hot and you could boil on the inside." Instead of showing concern for his friend, Jack laughs and responds, "What nonsense." Simon's always throwing a feint. When the choristers attempt to help Simon, Jack orders them to leave him alone. They do as told and lie Simon back down on the sand. Jack ignores Piggy's concerns and asks about the plane, but Piggy cuts him off and tells him that they're trying to find order so they can figure out what to do. Like a douche, Jack quips, "You're talking too much. Shut up, fatty." Jack's behavior thus far serves a simple function, to establish his dominance. By insulting Piggy and demonstrating the power he wields with the choristers, he positions himself as the alpha amongst the group, and thus a formidable foe to any challenger. Yet Piggy doesn't back down. When Ralph brings up the need for a chief, Jack responds,
"I can be chief. I'm chapter chorister and head boy. I can see high C sharp."
As if that means anything to anyone else. Before Jack can hold a vote on its self-nomination, Piggy interrupts and argues that there should be more than one candidate for chief. This leads to Ralph nominating himself and the subsequent vote that gives Ralph the role of chief. Jack immediately bemoans the unfairness of the vote because he can't accept defeat. But a now conscious Simon undercuts him and says, "The vote happened. Ralph is chief." This moment marks Jack's first defeat, which stings more than it should because Jack's overblown sense of self and need for control. But lucky for Jack, in an attempt to appease him, Ralph tells him, "The choir belongs to you, of course." Here, Ralph makes a critical error. He splits the boys into two factions, the choir and everyone else. The choristers take the cue, and one says, "We could be the army." Another suggests, "The hunters." And in no time flat, Jack asserts himself as
"The leader of the hunters." Yes, I'll do well.
But of course, they're not hunters. They're singers. Jack's high C sharp isn't going to do shit. Still, the newfound title puts a smile on Jack's face. In his first action as chief, Ralph assembles a small team, comprising himself, Simon, Jack, and Piggy, to figure out where they are. As they walk up a mountain, they talk about their fathers. Ralph says that his father is a petty officer in the Navy. Simon says his father is a wing commander in the RAF. Piggy's parents are sadly dead, so he keeps quiet. Jack stops walking, turns to face the others, and like a self-important asshole says, "I can't tell you what my father does, but he's very important to the country." At the top of the mountain, they find the pilot. Ralph asks, "Do we bury him first?" Jack responds, "No, because he made a mistake. He must take responsibility. A Christian burial would be the wrong thing." Jack has no knowledge that the pilot made a mistake. Once again, he's trying to assert his dominance, but this time, he bases his command on religious righteousness. To him, this should be an easy win, but it's not because the others see no reason to disrespect the dead. So Ralph offers a compromise. "We could put him in the sea. That's what they do in the Navy, no matter how Christian someone is." Jack begrudgingly agrees, but they're too weak to carry the pilot. So Jack suggests rolling the pilot down the cliff and onto the shore, a worse desecration than not burying him. Despite Piggy's protest, they do just that. As Jack looks over the mountainside, he offers a sordid eulogy. We say it matters what one does and how one does it. A better man, a better pilot would not have made that mistake. A disgusted Simon follows up with a prayer. And again, Jack faces another, albeit minor, defeat. Up until this point, Jack has positioned himself as a larger-than-life figure, the virtuoso, the leader, the hunter. But he learns the hard way that his self-image is all but an illusion. As Piggy collects wood, he catches sight of a piglet and gives chase, and so does Jack. When the piglet becomes trapped in creepers, Jack pulls out his knife, but he chokes. He can't kill it. When the piglet frees itself and flees, Jack accuses Piggy of letting it go. Piggy politely corrects him. "You lost your nerve is all. But not to worry, there will be others." But for Jack, this truth is too much to bear. So Jack demands Piggy take it back and tries to explain that he was trying to decide where to stab the piglet, but an incredulous Piggy laughs. Piggy becomes fed up with Jack's self-aggrandizing bullshit and calls him a liar. Then Piggy goes for the jugular and questions whether Jack's father really is a spy.
My father's a spy. Jack!
Piggy's words cut deep because he speaks the humiliating truth. Jack and his dad aren't shit. He's just a loudmouth spewing lie after lie. Deep down, Jack is just a scared, insecure boy, but Jack forgoes his bluster. He knows he's met his match, so he leans into Piggy and in a menacing tone predicts his future, that Ralph will eventually grow irritated with him. Piggy senses the danger he's placed himself in and apologizes, but the damage is done. Jack is in full denial mode. He tells Piggy, "You won't tell anyone because it was your fault." Then he adds a not-so-veiled threat. The sky is darkening, and the beast is close at hand. Within a few short hours, Jack's sense of self, his power and pride, has collapsed in the face of a reality he can't control. His public failure to slay a pig, and Piggy's refusal to cede his control, become a humiliating blow to his ego that he will do anything to erase. The second episode, entitled Jack, opens with Jack tracking an animal's footprint, and then a flashback of Jack standing alone at an airport, watching parents send off their children with hugs and kisses. His parents' absence here suggests one reason he seeks the attention of the boys. He needs to be seen, a very human desire. Back in present day, Jack commits to proving his abilities and importance, so he pledges to hunt a pig and keep the signal fire going. But he faces yet another humiliation when he attempts to recover debris from the plane on a steep rock. Halfway up the rock, Jack's perceived bravery meets reality, and he becomes too scared to climb any further, so he retreats. But he struggles so much that Roger has to climb up to guide him down. Though he thanks Roger, he tells Roger and Morris not to tell anyone. At this point, Jack realizes that he's not brave, and that he can't do anything on his own. His power lies within a group, and this realization leads to a plan to hunt the pig, a full choir attack. That is, get the entire choir to kill the pig. The reality is Jack and the boys don't need to hunt a pig. The boys can live off the island's fruit. But Jack's story about his father reveals a key motivation for hunting the pig. He tells Simon that his father once hiked across Scotland with nothing and lived off the land. His father claimed that he learned more from that trip than proper schooling, and that hike taught him how to be successful. Jack clearly idolizes his father, even if he appears absent in his life. So to be like his father, Jack treats being stranded on the island as a test in life, a rite of passage to prove himself a man, as well as a way to gain his father's approval. And killing the pig becomes a way to achieve this goal. But it also serves three other functions: to recover a sense of self, to prove he isn't a coward, and establish his status amongst the boys. With the chorister's help, Jack kills his pig, but his triumph is brief because of a crucial error. He is so obsessed with the hunt that he forgets about the signal fire, which dies out when a ship sails by the island. Because of his error, he costs the boys a chance at rescue. When Ralph confronts him, Jack refuses blame and tries to steer the conversation toward his successful hunt. But Ralph reminds him that he volunteered to tend the signal fire. Again, Jack refuses the blame and says, "I am a hunter, you're the chief." Ralph responds, "You're a failure." This statement is so undeniably true that even Morris apologizes. But not Jack. In a pathetic attempt to shift the focus away from his public humiliation, he questions Ralph's authority and shits on the rules that govern their little society. Jack says bollocks to the rules. There'll be other ships. But everything changes when Piggy enters the fray and poses one damning question. What if there isn't, you idiot? And Jack finally breaks and attacks Piggy. He then laments how boring playing it nice is, how boring toilets, water, and hut building are on what he calls an adventure island. Here, Jack tries to reframe his failure as born of boredom and societal expectations, not incompetence. So he announces that he's starting a new camp, one that hunts, sings, and dances, and leaves. Initially, no one follows him, leading him to cry because he knows he's a failure, but his hunters eventually join him. With his own camp, Jack chooses to confront his fears. When he leads the expedition to hunt the beast, he takes both camps to the one unexplored part of the island, which is accessible only by a narrow rock bridge. Beneath the bridge, rocks jut out of the shallow water. Falling into it means certain death, and Jack is scared. But when Ralph says, "I'm chief, I'll go," and orders the other boys to stay hidden, Jack doesn't flee. He tells Ralph, "I'm a headhunter. Couldn't let you do it on your own." Finally, he rises to the challenge, which is a terrible thing for someone as awful as Jack to achieve. They finally find the beast, what appears to be a corpse attached to a parachute, but instead of attacking it, they all flee. Back on the beach, Jack announces that they've seen the beast and that there's only one thing to do: hunt back. Tired of Jack's bullshit, Ralph says the man who ran faster than anyone. Once again, Jack deflects and accuses Ralph of calling the hunters cowards. Then he claims that all of Ralph's talk is really Piggy's words, that Ralph is merely Piggy's puppet and Piggy the real leader. With this accusation, Jack casts Ralph as an illegitimate leader and presents himself as a real leader, someone who acts instead of talks. Also, by characterizing Piggy, the butt of many jokes, as the hidden leader, Jack evokes a sense of shame and disgust in the boys, a rhetorical sleight of hand to convince them to abandon Ralph and Piggy and follow him instead. And most do after Jack beats up Ralph with a conch no less. From then on, Jack becomes more aggressive. His hunters raid Ralph's camp and steal their fire. Afterward, Jack appears and invites the camp to a feast. His speech ends with two hunters proclaiming,
The chief is spoken!
And there you have it. Jack finally gets what he wants, and all he had to do was wreck civilization. At the feast, Jack drives the boys into a frenzy. They dance and stab into the sand. Then they chant. Someone sees something in the distance and shouts, "There!" Without thinking, the boys surrender to their most savage impulses and attack the figure, which turns out to be Simon, who was heading toward the beach. Having now killed a human, Jack becomes a true savage. When Ralph calls Jack a dirty thief and savage for stealing Piggy's glasses, Jack lunges at him with a spear. Though Ralph tries to fight him off, Jack winds up beating him with the spear. Meanwhile, Piggy snatches the conch and announces, "I've got the conch," thinking the conch still gives the holder power, but it doesn't. After Jack screams,
Stop the boring next pig!
Roger throws a rock at Piggy and strikes him in the head, causing him to drop the conch, which shatters into countless pieces. For a moment, Jack looks regretful, but then he orders his tribe to snatch the twins and screams,
Chief!
The series ends with Jack's tribe hunting Ralph. When Jack and Ralph square off, Ralph says, "You want me to call you chief? If you want that, I will, because I don't want to be chief of all of this. My friends are dead." But Jack doesn't answer the question. Instead, he says, "You're the one who ruined everything." Of course, he's not. So why does Jack blame Ralph? Jack has become everything he wanted to be, the alpha male. The problem, he knows it's all wrong, that he's committed countless sins. Remember, he's the leader of a church choir. He's learned right from wrong, but he can't accept blame because that would reflect weakness, for only weak people like the pilot make mistakes. Deflection has long been Jack's go-to defense mechanism, and it's no different here. So Jack scapegoats Ralph for the murders of Simon and Piggy, and his tribe's descent into savagery. Jack illustrates what happens when your sense of self meets reality. Jack is weak and insecure, but because he surrounds himself with yes-men who enable him, his worst impulses go unchecked. His deflections become the truth. His cruelty emerges from a desperate need to escape humiliation and powerlessness. Every challenge to his authority, whether from Ralph's legitimacy, Piggy's intelligence, or his own failures, threatens the identity he tries to construct, especially on the island. But instead of accepting vulnerability, Jack learns that aggression can silence doubt and restore control. The more ashamed and insecure he feels, the more vicious he becomes, because cruelty allows him to suppress his fears, and most importantly, transform weakness into dominance. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more film analysis. Until next time.